General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting live on WNN 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and the World Wide Web. This is Make America Think Again with your Google Blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Trento Hour. Here we are on Monday, December 14th. Boy, the weekend went by really quickly, but here we are bright and early and ready to share our big idea. We have a great guest on this morning. We are on WNN and iHeartRadio. That's 1470 AM, 95.3 FM. And our mission here on the Trento Hour is to make America think again. And our big idea for today is Assault Georgia. And we'll go into that as to what does that mean.
Sounds
and that's
militaristic.
what we're focusing on.
Wow.
Assault Georgia. And we wish everybody a happy Hanukkah today. And today, are we going to light now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let's light. So today is the fifth
There we
day
go.
of Hanukkah. There's 8 days. And
We're
so
actually
first
lighting
we
it
light the lead
for
one,
the
which is
people
called
in
the
their automobiles.
Shamash. And I'll say the prayer, which is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Blessed are you, God, who has made us holy through God's commandment and commanded us to light the Hanukkah candles.
Don't burn down the microphone there.
Don't burn down the
Baruch
set.
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asa nisim lavosenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. Blessed are you, Hashem, who where am I? Ruler of the universe, who performed wonders for our ancestors in history at this time of year. So who has performed miracles for us?
Mark, this is the first lighting the Hanukkah
Blow
candles.
out the middle one. You're gonna lose it for the other
There we
days.
go.
There we go.
There we are. It's the
wow.
fifth.
Very cool.
It's actually, this is a little one, nice little tiny one. It's supposed to last, actually, the candle should last a half hour in order to be kosher. But you know what's interesting about a flame and why in Judaism we light candles like Shabbos, we light candles indoors. Hanukkah, we want to bring light to the world, so we put our menorahs out by the windows. But a flame, gravity doesn't affect the flame. It goes up.
Oh,
so that's
cool.
why in Judaism we
the
light
flame will go
candles
down.
often to commemorate holidays
cool.
and Shabbos. So we go up. It's against nature. Which today, with what's going on, what we're going to discuss
much going
today,
on. But wait a minute. You're my Jewish co-host. We, the Christian side, we have our little something.
Yeah, I
that
want to
brought.
hear about your something.
I brought a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And it's not totally a Christian symbol, but it is to an extent.
Or
I have it right here. I'll bring it on screen. Here's my Christmas tree. and many
Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Is it a Charlie Brown Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Is that what this is?
Technically, you got to have Linus's blanket wrapped around the bottom of it.
Suzi had no idea what this was. What is that thing doing in here?
That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It's a Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Yeah, tell me about it though.
Tell you
me
about
the
it?
story.
How about this? How about that?
What?
Plays music.
That's
she doesn't know
very
what that
cool.
She doesn't know what that music is.
There we go. I think I'll let it go as background music for the whole day. For those of you driving, I'm holding up a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. Why don't you describe it to the people?
Yeah, so
background music.
there's a tree that's kind of sparse.
Kind of
sparse, but it looks like someone made it. It looks homemade.
No.
But it's got a ball of yarn on the end, red ball of yarn, which I'm sure has significance. It looks like pine, right? Is that pine? Pine tree?
It's a pine tree.
Yeah.
Pine tree. And there's simplicity about it.
Yeah.
And it's also, you look at it.
I don't want to put it too close to the candles. We'll be using the fire extinguisher.
FYI, Susie, I don't think your candles are kosher.
But I'll put it over here.
Or what?
Are kosher. They're already halfway
Yeah,
gone.
I know.
It's
We just so symbolically bring it in. We know Christmas is coming soon, and here it is, Hanukkah, and it is a time of miracles, and we certainly share a lot Tom and I, and he is an evangelical Christian. I is a Torah observant Jew. We share many things in common. And we were just saying this morning that during these times, it's very tenuous, right? We got the Supreme Court decision. We got what's going on in Georgia. We got the senatorial races. And now more than ever, we always have to believe in God and we always have to trust God. But there are times in our lives when we have to even identify even more and grab onto that even more, because we're in very tenuous times. And really we need to be cognizant that God is always there, even though we don't see him.
Absolutely. And it's an amazing week. We got great guests all week. We have former Congressman Barr coming on in a little bit, Congressman from Georgia.
Right.
And he's a legend in many respects. He was one of the House managers in the impeachment process for Bill Clinton. He was involved in impeaching Bill Clinton, but he's obviously very involved in his home state of Georgia. So our big idea is to assault Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I'll have a little visual. I have some visual items here. The first part of assault is, and you can see that, right?
Right.
And now we're assaulting Georgia because we're fighting the Democrat Party.
Right.
And the best way to remember the Democrat Party is
through that word.
S's. Yeah, not the curse word S's.
Right, but donkeys.
Donkeys. That's their symbol.
Right.
So we can properly refer to them. And if you then take that word, see what's in the beginning of this word?
Yeah, look
assault.
At that.
Look at that.
Right.
Assault means in Latin to leap. You leap into something, you go in. We're leaping in, and we've been leaping in since the 4th of November, when we saw that our sister state to the north didn't quite pull it off like we did down here. We decided, the United West and our team of JEXA, Christians on a Mission, Women Impacting the Nation, Tom and Carol Hayes and all the work they're doing, and Henry Patino and Mary up north. And is Mary with us? I don't know if she's with us.
I hope so. I love Mary.
Yeah, I know. We
love her being on the show.
But we don't always know because she's
smart.
working on assaulting Georgia.
Yep.
So our focus is to mobilize Christians and Jews in Georgia to have a turnout. This is coming down to a turnout in Georgia for the two current senators, the appointed Senator Kelly Loeffler and the elected Senator David Perdue. Both in this past election didn't get 50% of the vote. It was diluted terribly on Kelly Loeffler's part. I think there were 20 candidates running, and David Perdue. So they're down to running against the fraud Reverend Raphael Warnock, Kelly Loeffler. Do a lot about him. We just released over the weekend Buzzsaw Media's expose of Reverend Warnock, who wrote this book, The Divided Mind of the Black Church. And he's a liberation theologian. We're going to get into all that, what that means and how it impacts every single person. If you're driving, listening, whatever you're doing, this guy who could be your senator in 22 days, it will be destructive for anyone that considers himself a serious Jew or serious Christian. That's why we're assaulting. Then we have a Jewish fellow running against David Perdue, a Christian. And I don't know. What do you think about his view of Jewish politics, John Assa?
And he's obviously not an observant Jew. And what he believes and how he and his campaign strategies are anything but from a observant or a religion. You don't even have to be observant. I mean, but from a Torah or Bible perspective, it certainly is not what he stands for. So Jew or not Jew or whatever religion any of them are, we've got to look and see, what do they say? What are they saying? And what are they representing? And if he's a Marxist, so to me, he's like an atheist. So it's unfortunate when there are misguided people, whether they be whatever religion, but he's obviously very misguided, and he cannot be put in that position. Because what will happen is there will be the Senate will then therefore be in big trouble. It'll be Democrat.
It'll be Charlie Brown Christmas trees in the Senate. You know?
So there won't be a balance of power. And that is very bad for our country. It's the opposing views that's important so that we can get an accurate assessment of all of any amendments or the direction of the country. And we need that balance. So very, very important for Georgia. That's why all eyes are on Georgia, because of this.
That's why we're assaulting Georgia now. When you look at this graphic we're going to put up right now, and again, for those of you driving, we're a radio show. We're broadcast on WWNN 1470. You can pick it up on iHeartRadio anywhere, all the time. But you can also go to the United West, theunitedwest.org, and watch it. We basically produce a television show, and the audio portion is simulcast on a 50,000 watt station going from Miami way north, covering 5-6 million people. So we'll be very descriptive when we're showing you items. The first item we're putting up, through the complexity and the wonder of our control room, where we have a guest today. Hi, guest. How you doing?
Hi,
Welcome
guest.
to the show.
Oh, we're so happy to have a guest.
We have a guest, a live studio audience. Suzi.
Yes.
What do you see there? There's a map of the United States, and it looks like somebody got red spray paint and sprayed it all over, but then they got a little brush and touched up a couple of places with blue. Without knowing what that's all about, what do you think it is?
So what we have is the red, which represents Republican, the elections, and how many voted largely, a majority of Republican, and then those that were Democrat of the blue.
But it's broken down by counties. Those are counties.
Right, not states, counties.
So if you look at the country is red.
Red.
The vast geography and population becomes another issue, because when you start looking at the blue, look at Miami.
Yeah.
There's
that area, one area.
There's blue in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and then in Orlando. And that's it. The rest of the state is red. You go over to Texas, gigantic state. All the counties are red except Austin and Houston and a few others. You go up to New York. New York is red. The whole thing is red except New York City, 8 million people. You go out to California. You got Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. A little more blue there, but a tremendous amount of red in there. This is why we meet today on the 14th in our state capitals to have the electors select who is going to be the president, not necessarily the popular vote. Very confusing for people.
And that's why the Electoral College is so important, because if we just counted on those big cities where there's a large population, then the popular vote would just be those big cities. That would be it, because the majority of the people live in those big cities. So then you would have the farmlands, for instance, that are more widespread, they're spread out, so they wouldn't have a vote. Right. So what would a city care about when it comes to laws and it comes to things that are special to them because of farmlands and growing fruits and vegetables? Like, they wouldn't care. So it's so that everybody in the country is represented, all viewpoints.
Yeah, but here's what happened. The founders of our country in their wisdom came up with the concept of the Electoral College. Except, who would have thunk that today in New York, one of the electors is Hillary Clinton? Can you believe that?
No way. I didn't know that.
She's an elector. And we have a cool little video that works for the radio audience. You can listen to this, and it obviously works for the TV audience. But you need to follow us. You need to follow us at the United West. You need to follow us on Facebook for as long as we're going to be there. Do we have a short video explaining the Electoral College on today, December 14th, the meeting of the Electoral Colleges in all the state capitals in the United States.
Day,
Here we go.
December 14th.
Check this out.
You may think the U.S. election is over and Joe Biden has secured the presidency with 80 million votes. But there's still a significant step to go on December 14th, and it all comes down to how the U.S. president is actually elected. When Americans went to the polls, they weren't technically voting for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but for members of something called the Electoral College. The word college simply refers to a group of people, or electors, with a shared task to choose the President of the United States. The system goes back more than 200 years. The founders of the United States wanted to establish a democratic system, but were concerned that a direct popular vote might lead to the election of an unsuitable president. Electors were settled on as a compromise. Each state was given a number of electors based roughly on the size of its population. Today, there are 538 electors, and the successful presidential candidate will need to get a majority of these, at least 270, in order to win. In most states, the candidate who wins the popular vote gets the support of all of that state's electors. For example, whether a winning candidate gets 99 or 51% of the vote in California, they would still receive all the state's 55 electoral college votes. That's why it's possible for a candidate to lose the popular vote across the country, but still secure a majority of electoral college votes and become president. That's what happened in 2016, when Trump secured the presidency despite getting almost 3 million fewer votes than his election rival. 2 out of the last 6 elections were won by candidates who had fewer votes than their rivals, although this hadn't happened for more than 100 years before the 2000 election. What all this means is that campaigns often focus on strategies that help secure the 270 electoral votes needed to win. They tend to target battleground or swing states, rather than trying to turn out voters in states which consistently vote for the same party. In fact, in the 2020 presidential election, 12 battleground states saw 96% of campaign events. 33 states saw no events at all. So, the 538 members of the Electoral College play a crucial role in how the President of the United States is elected. Over the years, there have been efforts to change the Electoral College system, but proponents say it helps deliver decisive results across a vast country. And everyone knows the rules of the game before Election Day.
Except that
Pretty cool little
Yeah.
video. But here's some more information, because it's a very it's a subject we don't even really listen to, because normally it's just a de facto process. That guy won. He won on November 3rd, and the electors go and they do something. But now it's all being called into question, because there's an effort to have the state legislature, the body, reject the decision of the Democrat electors, and if it's a Republican state, and say, no, it's too much fraud. We're not accepting you guys as electors. We're going to go with the Republican slate of electors. And some states are sending 2 slates of electors. But let's back up a little bit so everybody understands.
If he does that, then that's trouble. Yeah.
What's that?
If they send 2 slates of electors, then it comes. Well, go ahead.
Then it's going to have to be the ruling body has to make a decision, and this thing will be all over the place. Who can be an elector? Well, retired politicians. Bill Clinton cast an electoral vote for his wife, Hillary, in 2016. Wasn't that nice?
Wow.
Honey, I'm going to vote for
sharing.
you, honey. State and local officials. You can't be a current elected official. You can be former elected officials. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was an elector in 2016. A lot of grassroots activists, lobbyists, and other figureheads from states. Usually, if you're working real hard for the party, when the party has their convention, they select, it's a reward. If you do a real good job, you're donating a lot of money and you're out there working. You want to be an elector? Yeah. Okay, you get a free trip to the Capitol on the 14th of December, and you go do a little symbolic thing. You sign 6 pieces of paper. One goes to the National Archives, one goes to the Senate, one goes to the House, one goes here, one goes there. You put one in your wallet, you do whatever. Professional connection, Donald Trump Jr. was an elector in 2016 for his dad. I vote for you, Dad. You know, that happened. They're chosen, just like I said, at the state convention usually. And it's really pro forma. They just go in there, and normally in some states they have laws. This is a problem, that whoever won the popular vote must get the electoral votes, but that's not necessarily constitutional. So then right now, if you go to a state that has a law where you have to get the guy who won the popular vote, let's say California, Biden did. We know that because it's a corrupt state to start with. If the electors say, if the legislature says, no, we don't like that, well, they're going to go against state law, but then there'll be a constitutional issue, and the Supreme Court would have to weigh into that very, very quickly. This may happen today.
So in other words, those electors, right? So let's say California then voted for Biden.
Right.
Okay, the electors.
They have 55 electors.
55. So they would not necessarily get all 55.
If some of them said, if all of them said for some reason, they're Democrats, they're not going to, but if all of them said, we're going to vote for Trump and they're going against their state law, then there's going to be a Supreme Court issue to determine whether or not the California law saying you have to holds precedent over Article 2 of the Constitution, which says the electors get to choose through the state legislatures. And if the state legislature changes its mind, this is what Trump and Don Brown have been saying. Go to your legislatures, call a session, have them change it, do it now. You talk about Hail Mary passes. On today, this is a Hail Mary pass. The football field's 1,000 yards long, and he's got to throw the ball 900 yards. This is not going to happen, okay? But again, you may see some people bail, and they may just say, even some Democrats may say, it's too much corruption. I can't. Well, but he's got room. He's got 306, so he can go down to 271 Biden, as long as he gets 270.
Well, here's the basic scenario if they send 2 electors. Which I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen. But if it does,
sets of electors.
2 sets of electors. Scenario where it comes up to Vice President Pence. He chooses the electors. And
we have Congressman Barr with us.
Oh, okay.
Let's bring him in.
Oh, great.
Go ahead.
So, we're so happy that we have Congressman Barr. Just by way of introduction, he's an American attorney. He's an attorney. He's a politician. He served as a federal prosecutor and as a congressman in Georgia. And in addition to that, he attained national prominence as one of the leaders of the impeachment of President Bill Clinton. So welcome, Congressman Barr. We're so happy to have you with us.
Welcome to the show, Congressman Barr. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I was enjoying listening to y'all's dialogue there for a couple of minutes.
Well, what a day. We have the impossible, a vaccination done by the end of the year, as the president said.
That's right. Yes.
They're going to be in people's arms. I don't know who's going to get them or not.
Starting very soon.
Benjamin Netanyahu said he will take it publicly the first day it's available. And we have this date, the 14th, Congressman Barr, but great to have you on the show. Congressman Barr and I were together election night. What did you think election night when we left? What was going through your mind about who won this election?
On election night down in Florida, I was flying high. I was just absolutely amazed that the numbers showed that President Trump, despite all of the pundits saying otherwise, seemed to have achieved a re-electoral victory. Of course, by the time I got back to Georgia the next morning, things had changed dramatically, and they continued to go downhill with all of the mail-in ballot counting that went on very suspiciously, to put it as nicely as possible, here in Georgia and a handful of other states.
We want to get into this with you, because for context, for our listening audience on WNN 1470 AM here in South Florida, for those of you watching on theunitedwest.org, I direct an organization, the United West. It's typically an educational counterterrorism organization dealing with Islamic jihadis and Marxists. And we put a lot of that on hold the past 2 years when we saw the battle that took place when Ron DeSantis almost lost to a doctrinaire Marxist, Andrew Gillum, who was working in simpatico with the woman from your state, Stacey Abrams. And DeSantis, out of 8.5 million votes, won by 31,000. We said, we got to gear up for Trump in 2020 here in Florida. We got to mobilize 1,000,001 evangelicals and conservative Jews. Suzi, by the way, I'm an evangelical, Congressman Barr. Suzi's my Torah observant Jewish co-host. And so we went to work. Our organization, we mobilized a lot of people. And by the grace of God, we successfully helped deliver a win here in Florida for Donald Trump by about 500,000 votes out of 11.5 million. So we're very happy with that. But then we saw our sister state to the north became ground zero in the battle. So we said, we got to help. And we regrouped, and we bought time on a big Atlanta station, AM 920, The Answer. We probably should have him on that show too.
Yes.
And we have ground people there, and we're doing everything we can to help Georgia because it is ground zero for this senatorial battle. So we want to center on that this morning. But first, I got a couple of background points on your background. You went to, I think, high school in Tehran, Iran. Is that true?
That's where I graduated from high school. Yes, sir.
Okay, Georgia didn't have any high schools you liked, or what's the problem?
Well,
that happen?
it was a long journey to Georgia. After I graduated from high school, I grew up overseas. My dad moved around from job to job between the time I was in third grade until I graduated from high school. But I wound up in Los Angeles at USC, got my undergraduate degree there, and then came back east, went to grad school at GW in Washington, D.C., and worked for the CIA, got my law degree at night at Georgetown. And then, and only then, in the late 70s, did I move to Georgia to begin practicing law. And I've been here ever since.
What was, we do a lot of work in the Middle East. We go back and forth to Israel. We lead these national security tours. We want you to come on our next one.
I'd love to.
Yeah, with your background, what was Tehran like in the 60s and under the Shah? I guess you were there under the Shah, right?
I was. It was a wonderful place to be. It was moving in a very Western direction. My classmates, I went to an international school there. My classmates were from all over the world, Europe, the U.S., Canada, Israel, because at the time, the Shah was very open toward other religions, and there were a lot of Iraqi Jews that had been persecuted and would be persecuted if they stayed in Iraq. So they came to Iran. It was a very open society. I remember, walking at night anywhere in the city, virtually taking cab rides, going out with friends. Very, very different from, of course, when the religious fanatics took over in 1979.
Yeah. Where were you in 79 when the embassy was overrun?
I was in Washington. I'm sorry, I was back down in Georgia by then. I had moved to Georgia in 1978. So I was down here in Atlanta practicing law by that time.
We kind of passed over your little stint at Clowns in Action over there in the agency. What were you doing at the agency?
Well, a number of things. I went through an extensive training program, which gave me a familiarity in working in different parts of the agency, and I decided to settle on initially doing current intelligence analysis because I wanted to go to law school at night, so I worked during the day. And then for the last 3 or so years of my time with the agency, I did legislative work. And then, interesting sidelight here, in the same office for a couple of years, I worked with a fellow named Bill Barr. He and I were both going to law school at night. He was at GW, I was at Georgetown. We both worked in legislative counsel's office at the time.
Wow.
Is
wow.
that
The Barr brothers, right?
Is there any relation between you and the other Barr?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there any relation between you and the other Barr or anything like that? Any type of just name?
No, he's from New York. He's an extremely bright man, very, very smart. And has done very well for himself, obviously. I don't agree with him on all of his positions. He's a slight bit more supportive of government surveillance and government powers than I am. But no relationship, just the fact that we've worked together both at the agency and then we overlapped in time at the Department of Justice briefly.
All right. Now, there's another interesting point in your life where you and I probably crossed paths. You were elected in the, I think, the 104th Congress contract with America, right?
That is correct.
I ran one of Gingrich's races. I ran California 3. A friend of mine, very bright attorney, Berkeley, then Hastings. He decided in his early 30s to run against Vic Fazio. Remember Vic Fazio?
I do.
I ran the race against Fazio during contract. We almost knocked him off with virtually no money. And but I was going back and forth from California to DC with that whole freshman class that was simply amazing, except for Joe Scarborough, who went off the rails for sure, at MSNBC now. But that was an amazing time. That freshman class came in, confronted Clinton on everything. Clinton winds up taking credit for the changes in welfare, the changes in the economy, everything. But you sort of dealt with Mr. Clinton. You were one of the House managers leading the impeachment against him. What was the difference, for the sake of our folks, so they have a context of you and history? You led the impeachment, which was successful in the House against Bill Clinton, but you also commented quite a bit on the impeachment this year. People don't even realize Trump was impeached. You know,
yeah.
Was there a difference or distinction between those two movements?
It was like night and day. Back in 1998 and 1999, during the Clinton impeachment, there were real issues that we studied, that we analyzed, and that formed the basis for the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And it had to do with violations of federal criminal laws, not civil statutes, but federal criminal laws, perjury and obstruction of justice. And we received in the fall of 1998 a report from Ken Starr as the independent counsel, a report that he was required by law to send to us. It wasn't because he didn't like Clinton or something. And we then took that information, developed additional information through Judiciary Committee hearings, and Clinton was impeached on December 19th of 1998 on 2 counts, 1 perjury and obstruction of justice. And these are very serious violations of federal law. Fast forward to this year, early this year, and President Trump was impeached on essentially nothing. There were no violations of law. There was no evidence that he had violated any laws, even if he had not been charged with them. So it was purely a political exercise, unlike what happened a generation before.
Yeah, and that takes us up to today, where there's so much question about the legitimacy of this election in several key states, one of which is your state. And we want to center on Georgia. Our show is being sent to Georgia. We package the podcast, send it out, and we have people distributing all over Georgia. So we're going to promote the fact that you're on, obviously, giving an analysis of the situation. And as of today, Stacey Abrams has been successful in having 1.2 million people. And you only had 5 million vote on November 3rd. 1.2 million absentee ballots have been requested over the weekend on Meet the Press. She said she guaranteed a Democrat win. She said 85,000 of that 1.2 are new voters between 18 and 25. She said there are voters, meaning leftist, socialist, Marxist voters. And so we got that situation. We got a lot of fear on whether or not the machines, the Dominion machines, are going to play games with the election. We have assurances from people in Georgia saying, oh, no, the machines are okay. Congressman Barr, walk us through this and show us a path as to how the 2 Republican senators can get reelected and what everyone has to do in this country.
They have to get out and vote. Republicans and independents and even Democrats who believe in the rule of law and having government that actually does stuff need to come out and vote on January 5th, if not before, by mail-in ballot. That being said, of course, if Stacey Abrams is to believe, then, well, all of us can just go home and forget about it. But I don't take what Stacey Abrams said to the bank. I don't take it anywhere. She is a blustering far left Democrat who wishes to destroy our electoral system here in Georgia. Unfortunately, what we have in Georgia is a Secretary of State who seems bent on doing everything possible to increase the chances for more corruption and fraud in the election. It's mystifying. I can't explain it, why our Secretary of State is doing this. He is has been for now 2 weeks encouraging voters to go ahead and take mail-in ballots and mail the ballots in or drop them off at drop boxes because in his view, the mail-in ballot system works so well in November, we need to do it again. So what all of us who believe in the system and who want to make sure that we retain these 2 Senate seats, which I believe we will at the end of the day, I'm, as they say, cautiously optimistic. What we're doing is we're urging people to vote in person. Then that minimizes the chances for fraud. It doesn't get rid of them. It doesn't obviate them, but it minimizes the chances. And we are making sure that sufficient attention is brought to bear on the counting procedures in particularly Democrat counties like Fulton County, which is the city of Atlanta, so that the fraud that we saw take place last month doesn't take place again. But I think it's very important, despite the facts that courts, and I've said this all along, are not going to overturn the November 3rd election. I do think it's very important that we continue to press these cases to develop the evidence and make sure the public understands the corruption and the fraud that did go on, so that steps can be taken to stop it from recurring in coming election cycles. That's going to take action by the Georgia legislature, which hopefully will undo when it meets in January the steps that the Secretary of State had taken earlier this year that greatly facilitated the fraud in mail-in balloting.
Is there any signature matching going on at all on these things, as far as the early mail-in ones?
The problem is the settlement agreement that the Secretary of State reached with the Democrats way back in March, and this was not publicized at the time. It set in place a procedure for verifying mail-in ballot signatures that is so complicated, so complex, and so time-consuming that it doesn't work. When these ballots come in, if in fact there seems to be a mismatch between the signature on file and the signature on the mail-in ballot, none of these poll workers are going to go through the convoluted and time-consuming process with so many of these ballots coming in to verify them. It's an unworkable system. Yet the Secretary of State, with the concurrence of our Attorney General, went ahead and did this contrary to what the legislature had said. So that system remains in place, and our only hope is to have enough observers and enough attention brought to bear on the process this go round so that it doesn't happen again. There's a risk that we will see certainly fraud. And we know that Stacey Abrams and others have been encouraging people to move into Georgia to vote. Which as a practical matter can be done, but as a legal matter is unlawful. Hopefully our officials will be stopping that and have stopped it.
All right. This is a very, very important point. Tom Trento, your host, Suzi Gold, my co-host, Jay Mark, is in the control room. We're with our distinguished guest, the former Congressman. Bill, is it Bill or Bob? Which one are you again?
Bob Barr.
Are you the Bob?
Bill and Bob.
Oh, you're Bob, right? Okay, that's right. Congressman Robert Barr, Robert Lawrence Barr, right here. We have him here. And he served for 8 years, has a distinguished background in intelligence, as a prosecutor, all of this. And he's walking us through the process, 9:43 in the morning on WNN 1470. On the AM side, 95.3, on the FM side, on iHeartRadio worldwide, and on the UnitedWest.org and other stations. You can watch the live stream. Mark asked the question about comparing the signatures. And everyone who sent in an absentee ballot, you sign it, you hope you're signing it the way you signed the thing 10 years ago, whatever.
Matches.
So the question to you, Congressman Barr, I want to follow up on these signatures. If there is a question on the document you're looking at on a computer screen and the actual signature, are they put aside to evaluate later, or are they just thrown into the whole mix?
They are supposed to be set aside, reviewed by a panel, I believe, of 3 three election officials. If in fact they decide that the signatures do not match, then that sets in motion a procedure whereby the voter has to be contacted, given time to come in and verify the signature. So what I believe is happening in practice, as opposed to what's supposed to happen, is rather than go through that procedure with so many of these ballots coming in because the Secretary of State is encouraging it, what happens is they just look at them and throw them into the system. That's the problem. And once that occurs, there's no way of going back and verifying it, because those outer envelopes that have the signature on the ballot application are discarded. So that means that however many times you recount the votes, it's going to essentially give you the same figure, because the signatures on the incoming ballot envelopes have been discarded.
All right, now this is such a critical point for our audience. We've done extensive work back in 2018 on Stacey Abrams, and she is a doctrinaire Marxist. She has been involved in organizations supported by the Chinese Communist Party. She is being investigated now, one of her organizations, but she is the biggest proponent in Georgia of absentee ballots, because she knows you can trick the system so easily.
Exactly.
And that's the mess that's going on right now. Suzi, you had a question?
Yeah. So one of the other or two other issues that have been discussed is one, it's matching the signatures, but then you have the votes of felons, and then you also have all the votes from those that are deceased. So what is it that occurred for before in this election, and then also what's being done for this upcoming senatorial runoff?
Well, and we do know that thousands of votes were apparently, mail-in ballots were cast by persons who were deceased, who no longer resided in the state, and convicted felons who had not had their civil liberties yet restored. There's a process you can go through to do that. But what we are trying to make sure through party officials and others this go round is that the Secretary of State and the local election officials in these key counties are Democrats, of course, like Fulton County and other major cities throughout the state of Georgia, trying to make sure that we do have sufficient safeguards in place to make sure that those votes by convicted felons who have not had their rights restored and by persons who have died are not part of the system. But the problem is these local officials in key Democrat counties, and some of these are major metropolitan areas like Atlanta, have tremendous power to corrupt the system by doing, for example, what we saw on video that occurred late evening, early morning of November 3rd and 4th, and that is suitcases of ballots mysteriously appearing after the area had been vacated of observers. I don't think that will happen again, because there's been so much attention brought to bear on it, and we do have election officials and observers now that will watch that. But there still are problems, even in my home county of Cobb County, which until this cycle was a strong Republican county. The local election officials seem to be going off on their own, increasing the number of drop boxes for mail-in absentee ballots, and increasing the ability to have these ballots come in, reducing the number and way we have observers. So it's a constant battle with these local election officials, and state law needs to be changed so that the state has more control over these local election officials who basically can game the system as long as they have enough people to do so, and as long as prosecutions are not brought. And this is a key point here. If in fact there is evidence that criminal laws have been broken, Georgia criminal laws, then prosecutions should be brought. But thus far, we've seen no indication of that, even though the evidence does seem to be fairly strong.
Yeah, this results in a lot of people just saying, because we're very involved in this race, what's the sense? Why? But we're pushing them. You got to get out. You got to get out. You got to vote. I want to touch on one of the individuals that may be your senator from Georgia.
God forbid.
If everything goes wrong, the fraud, the Reverend Raphael Warnock. I happen to be a Christian theologian by training. And Raphael Warnock is one of these. You can see it. It's my Charlie Brown tree, by the way. We have here. It is actually a Charlie Brown tree because it plays Charlie Brown stuff. So, my background is theology, philosophy. He's a Black liberation theologian, but he's a smooth talker, a fancy Bill Clinton, Obama-esque type of speaker. He makes a nice presentation. The people love him. You have, out of your 11 million citizens, about 8.5 million Christians, but a significant portion are African-American Christians. We're trying to mobilize the African-Americans and the white Christians to vote according to their faith, which is more in line with the Republican Party. But when you see presentations like we're going to show you in a minute, this is 2016. And a guy died about 90 miles off our coast over here, a little country he took control of in 1959, 1960. And he brought forth the utopia system of Karl Marx. And you can go down there if you want to Cuba and check it out. Good cigars, that's about it. But when he died in 2016, 2 days later, Congressman Barr, 2 days later, the author of this book, the guy running for the U.S. Senate in Georgia, Reverend Raphael Warnock, decided to eulogize him at Ebenezer Baptist Church, the holy ground of Martin Luther King Jr.'s podium. And check this out. This is Reverend Raphael Warnock trying to explain Castro to the American audience. Listen to this.
Well, play.
We pray for the people of Cuba in this moment. We remember Fidel Castro, whose legacy is complex. Don't let anybody tell you a simple story. Life usually isn't very simple. His legacy is complex. Kind of like America's legacy is complex. While we focus on political prisoners in Cuba, you saw the folks standing here this morning. If some people get slapped on the hand for the same crime and others go to federal prison, then we too have our own political prisons. Because politics, more than the crime, politics of race and class, then in that sense, many of us have sisters and brothers who are political prisoners.
All right, Congressman.
I pray to a man who was a political prisoner.
Congressman Barr, you're trained as an investigator, and you had to make presentations to the U.S. Congress on probably what he just said. What can you interpret what he's saying to us, please?
In soft piano music.
He's an apologist for a murderous tyrant, Fidel Castro. It is absolutely documented beyond any reasonable doubt, any doubt whatsoever, that Fidel Castro was a murderous tyrant. And yes, there were thousands upon thousands of prisoners in Cuba over the years from the time that Fidel Castro and his gang took power, who were not just imprisoned, but tortured and murdered. And yet to simply say this, indicates that Fidel Castro is complex, and comparing that to the United States is, like saying that, well, Mao Zedong was problematic. Hitler was had questionable policies. I mean, it's outrageous. Interestingly, back and I forget what year it was, but I had introduced legislation in the House to remove the prohibition on U.S. presidents ordering the assassination of foreign leaders. And I then found myself mentioned in one of Fidel Castro's rambling midnight speeches, blasting Bob Barr because he wanted to have him assassinated. I mean, what Reverend Warnock is doing here, somebody said his name really ought to be Warlock.
Yeah, we do that.
What he's doing is I mean, I hate to use the term un-American because in America you can, you have the freedom to say what you will, but to compare the United States of America with our judicial system that is the best of any in the world and the fairest of any in the world, not perfect, but the best there is, comparing that to the use of the system of prisons, executions, and torture in Cuba is beyond outrageous. It truly is un-American. And I hope that voters in Georgia are not taken in by this. But as you say, and I've watched a number, as you have, of Warnock's ads, they're very smooth, they're very slick. He presents himself in a business suit, talking very calmly with presumed voters. But it's a facade. This man is an extreme leftist who very clearly equates the United States of America with foreign tyrants. He obviously does not like America. He can't like America the way he characterizes it, and yet he wants to serve in the United States Senate. I don't think he will.
Yes.
I'm optimistic that the voters in Georgia are not going to be in a majority taken in by this, but it's not guaranteed. We have to work very hard at it. We're optimistic.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your message.
I have some breaking news here real quick. The judge just approved the release of the Dominion forensic evidence in Michigan. This is going to be huge. This is going to blow up. They just released it like 5 minutes ago. So this is going to be a huge.
Wow. Breaking news. That was a case and they're releasing it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. We so appreciate you, Bob Barr, for coming on and sharing your views and keeping us up to date. And we agree with you that we need to make sure that we continue to educate Georgians so that they understand what's at stake here. And they understand that Warnock and Ossoff both represent this Marxist mentality and not to be fooled by their persona. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you on again and perhaps on our Georgia show. So look for my email so that we can schedule you.
Look forward to it.
So you have a great day. Thank you so much
Congressman
for joining
Barr,
us.
thank you very much. Let's give him a hand. Thank you very much.
Y'all take care.
And we better win. Otherwise, that thing hanging on your wall behind you, they're going to be knocking on your door and saying,
all of our doors.
Or better yet, that F4 Phantom that's hanging behind his left shoulder there, too.
Yeah, right. All right. You take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
All right, Congressman Bob Barr from the great state of Georgia.
Yes.
And Tom Trento here with Suzi.
And he knows that Georgians are not going to be fooled. And we're going to make sure of it, too.
Unbelievable Warnock stuff. Anyway, we got to get going. Tomorrow we have
Sam Markstein, who's the RJC National
Who do we have on Wednesday?
Director. Wednesday, we have Ginger Howard, and we also have Dr. Alveda King.
That's the Georgia show. Who do we have on our
Georgia
Florida show?
On our Florida, we have Melissa Carone, who was Rudy Giuliani's. She was one of the witnesses in Michigan. She was, if you watch the videos and if you watch on TV, she had blonde
what
hair.
What did you do? Were you there?
Yeah, she's from Michigan.
She's
very vibrant, and certainly she made a strong stand as to what she saw, regardless that she had to move, she had to take her kids out of school, and she's standing up for what's right and reporting what she saw.
All right, goodbye.
And here's our
Charlie
Christmas
Brown
tree.
Christmas tree.
Charlie.